Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday night edition of our council meeting. Before we start tonight's meeting, we'll have the prayer led by new Councilman Larry Henry, and then please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Once again, welcome to City Hall. Before we go any farther, we'll have roll call, please.
Bray.
Here.
Carroll. Henry.
Here.
Lubert.
Here.
Mahalovich.
Here.
Pope.
Here.
Prather.
Here.
Schulte. Scribner. Weber.
Here.
All right, we do have a quorum, and I believe Councilman Bray has something to ask us.
Mr. Mayor, I move to amend the agenda by adding bill number 2012-69.
So a motion
Second.
to approve or to amend the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Okay, with that, discussion. Ralph, the purpose of your motion?
This is something we've been, this is Moreland Avenue, the sidewalk project, Moreland Avenue Neighborhood Improvement Project. And we've been talking about it for several months now for a while. And the project's already been through Public Works. It's already been approved through Public Works, and all it needs is the funding. And as we've talked about in the budget meetings, there was a preference for funding this project by a special appropriation rather than through the budget process for 2013. Therefore, this was prepared and was ready Friday, but just not quite in time to get on the official agenda. Okay. So since it's ready to go, I would like to add it with this motion.
All right. Of course, the council can do with what they'd like. Drew, have you drawn this up, sir?
I did.
Okay. Any other discussion? Any debate? Seeing none, I feel you're ready to vote. Roll call, please.
Bray.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Lubert.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Pope.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schulte.
Aye.
Weber.
All right, motion passes, and that will add 2012-69 to the end of the first read bills. Any other changes to the agenda before we move on? Seeing none, next we have miscellaneous items on the agenda. If I could have Chief Rennick, Chief Schrader up, please. What we have here is a proclamation that is put the uniforms first. Nathan, could you tell us just a little bit about this proclamation? I know you played a big role in starting this, I think, roughly about a year ago.
Sure. This is the second year that the city has engaged in this program, and the idea is just to do something to kind of recognize the men and women of our police and fire, our EMS, and the military, because of all the sacrifices that they've made. And particularly, I think that we're always very mindful of this in this month of September because of the events of 9/11. And so this proclamation asks all the citizens of Jefferson City to, when you see a police officer or a fireman or an EMS worker or a soldier standing in line, just to let them go first, and kind of as a little thank you from the citizens of Jefferson.
All right, with that, Nathan's pretty much said it all, but during the month of September in the city of Jefferson, we will urge all residents and businesses to put the uniform first. Serving members of the military, personnel from both police, fire, sheriff, EMS services at all restaurants and stores as a small gesture of our appreciation as a city. Now, therefore, I, Eric J. Strump, Mayor of Jefferson City, do hereby proclaim Put the Uniform First as our month of September in Jefferson City, and ask all of our citizens to do the same. Gentlemen, we're very proud of both of your departments. I know both of you have served our city well, And we wish you well this month, and put the uniform first. Next, I have another special individual I would like to call on, Mr. Steve Picker. It's like he's been called to the principal's office. As many of us know, Steve has decided to take a position down in Florida and will be leaving the Convention and Visitors Bureau. He's been there for more than 9 years and 6 years as the director. During Steve's tenure, he was instrumental in obviously setting up a lot of our stuff at the Missouri State Penitentiary, and creating the Discover Jefferson City Foundation, which is a nonprofit arm of the CVB, which helps develop fundraising strategies to promote the things that we do here in the city. Steve has always been a promoter, obviously with the salad dressing of his grandmother's a long time ago, and obviously everything we do here within the city. Steve, we wish you well. You're a great friend, and it's with a great honor and a little bit of sadness that I give you a key to Jefferson City, because I think your key on working to MSP is really the future of our city. We thank you very much.
I just want to say thank you very much. I sure appreciate this. And, you know, over the last 9 years, with a little break in between, and then 6 years as director, I would have not been able to accomplish near as much without the staff of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, all of our volunteers that we have. We have great board members, but of course, the City Council has supported us all the way along with everything we've done. And I sure appreciate all that help, because without that, we would have never been where we are today. And of course, you guys would not expect me to walk away without promoting something. So I would like to encourage you to attend the SEC Pep Rally the Convention and Visitors Bureau is having this Friday night. It's an opportunity for our city to shine, for all the people that are staying in Jefferson City for the game that's going to take place on Saturday at Mizzou. So please come out on Friday night and join us. And then also take in all the other events that are taking place this weekend in Jefferson City. And then the weekend after that, we've got the Inside the Walls event taking place at the Missouri State Penitentiary. So please come out and enjoy those events. But once again, thank you very much. I sure appreciate this and appreciate the opportunities you guys have given me over the last 9 years at the Bureau. Thanks.
Steve, when is your last day, sir?
My last day is September 17th.
Okay. So you'll be here up until the MSP.
I
then,
will,
right?
yeah, through
All
that
right.
event.
All right. Well, thanks again.
Great. Thank you all very much.
All right, next we have a public hearing. It looks like it's a bill associated with 2012-55, and for that I'll call on Janice McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor. This bill came out of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and in the course of enforcing code requirements relating to the storage of large vehicles and trailers in front of residences, staff have had situations where residents continually move an offending vehicle, RV, boat, or trailer, only to return it to the same spot in order to allow another 72-hour time frame begin. Adding language to the code that would restrict that to 72 hours or more within the front yard within a 30-day period would allow the code enforcement officials a better way to deal with those persistent situations. And as an exhibit, so that you could better understand what is defined by yard, the zoning code shows that that area which is defined by a yard to be in front of the furthest extension of the building. So in the situation that you have with the house that's in the center of that diagram, you'll see it has a projection of the garage. So the front yard actually starts at that projection of the garage. So the area that would be regulated would be the driveway that's obviously there in front of the garage, and any area that happens to be in that side, inside that light green area. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? Seeing none, at this point in time, since this is a hearing, is there anyone here to speak in favor of this? Anyone against? Hearing will now be closed. Janice, do you have any final comments?
I don't, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any other questions from the council? All right, at this point in time, a roll call, please. Oh, let's third read it first.
An ordinance changing, amending, and modifying the zoning code of the city of Jefferson, Missouri by modifying specific use standards for outdoor storage and display.
Debate? Discussion? Roll call, please.
Henry.
Aye.
Lubert.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Pope.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schulte.
Aye.
Weber. Bray.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Now we'll move into number 7, minutes and reports filed here at City Hall. Have the Historic Preservation Commission again, Campo twice, the Environmental Quality Commission, the Cemetery Resources Board, the finance reports for July of 2012, certification of our August 7th election results here in Cole and Callaway County, and the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee, along with Cultural Arts Commission, Council on Administration, and the Police Personnel Board. Remember, if you would like to serve on one of our boards and commissions, you can do so by going to our website, which is jeffersoncitymo.org. Next, we'll have council committee reports. I know Councilwoman Carroll could not be here tonight. I think filling in for her is, who has it tonight? Oh, Rick, go ahead.
On the Administration Committee, we met on August 22nd, and we had passed amending the noise ordinance onto the Planning and Zoning Committee. And we also had a presentation by Mr. Charles Gaskin on the Conference Center, discuss absentee lord ordinance, frequent offender ordinance for code violations, and our next meeting will be Wednesday, September 27th.
All right, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Rick, for filling in. Moving on to finance, Councilman Schulte.
Thank you, Mayor. The Finance Committee or the Budget Committee continues to meet. Our next meeting is this Thursday from 5:30 to 7 across the hall. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sean. Moving up, Public Safety Committee, Dr. Pope.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Bill Lubert chaired that meeting in my absence, so he'll give the report.
All right, Councilman Lubert.
Thank you. The Public Safety Committee met Thursday morning, October 30, after the Brown Bagel meeting. We had a fairly thin agenda, but Captain Sonova filled in very nicely with a report on the new sirens that are being installed in Jefferson City and surrounding Cole County. The sirens are expected to be operational about October 1st. There'll be some shakeout time or some adjustment time to getting them operated just right. But in any case, they are very close at hand, and notices have been sent to the residences in the close proximity of the new sirens. And we urge Captain Sonova to work with the public relations and the newspaper people to have plenty of notice as to the new sights and sounds that will be associated with the sirens.
All right, thank you, Bill. Anything else? Okay, moving on, we have Public Works and Planning. Bob Scrivener could not be here tonight, but filling in for him is Councilman Bob Weber.
All I have to report is the next meeting is September 20th.
Thank you, Bob. Short and sweet.
Across the hall at 7:30.
Any liaison reports this evening? Mr. Henry.
Just briefly, JC TV Steering Committee met this past Friday on the 31st. Ms. Gloria Enlow, who's over JCTV, discussed an action plan that Lincoln was prepared to make and present towards the council. I think some of the council members have gotten some of that action plan. Also, we will meet again if funding is continued or partial funding is continued September 27th at 2 o'clock.
All right, thank you, Mr. Henry. Anyone else as far as liaison reports? To my left? Anyone else on the right? Okay, moving on. No appointments by the mayor this evening. Number 10, presentations from staff, consultants, or invited guests. And we have Janice McMillan to talk to us more about abandoned buildings issues.
Thank you, Mayor. In the mid-2000s, several ad hoc committees were formed that study various issues related to housing condition and status, property maintenance, and code enforcement. The designation of Old Town and the adoption of several proactive codes were derived from the work of those committees. The result of their work has provided us with a toolkit of proactive policies that are aimed at encouraging property maintenance, maintaining housing conditions, and improving neighborhoods. And the vacant building registration program that was adopted by Ordinance 14246 is one such program that will be implemented this fall. Before I talk about the slide that's on the screen, I want to share with you some comparisons from the 2000 census. In 2000, the vacancy rate was 7% citywide, but in the city's core, it was 2 times that at 16%. Citywide, 40% of the housing units were renter occupied, meaning 60% were owner occupied. However, in the city's core, renters occupied more than 70% of the housing units. Property maintenance was an increasing concern as the city's housing stock aged in place. And the presence of vacant buildings was a growing concern. The 2000 census collected statistics on housing, including vacant structures. 18,852 housing units were counted in 2010. That's total number of housing units in Jefferson City. Of those, 17,278 were occupied. That's 92%. 1,574 units were classified as vacant. That's 8%. Of those vacant units, the Census Bureau reported that 1,138, that's 1,138 units, were for rent, for sale, pending some type of occupancy, or seasonal, which leaves 28% of those vacant units. 436 units were identified as other, which kind of begs the question, what does other mean? Well, I have an answer, I suspect, and I'll give you some examples of what other means in just a couple of minutes. Ordinance 14246 that was passed by the council on September 4th, 2007 requires or defines an abandoned structure as any building, including an accessory building, which has been unoccupied for a period of at least 90 consecutive days and meets 2 other criteria that I'll describe in just a moment. 91 buildings have been identified as staff as meeting this definition. Among those criteria, in addition to being vacant for 90 days, it must also not be secured, is fire damage to an extent which prohibits safe human occupancy, or is a site of loitering or vagrancy, or demonstrates a lack of property maintenance and upkeep, as evidenced by 1 or more violations of the city code, or has been boarded up for at least 90 days, or has taxes in arrears to the city for a period of time exceeding 365 days, or has water and or electricity that's been disconnected, or is structurally unsound, or is potentially hazard or danger to persons. Here are some examples. This particular property has been identified as meeting the definition of abandoned because it has been unoccupied for at least 90 consecutive days, it's been boarded up for at least 90 days, it demonstrates a lack of property maintenance, water or electricity has been disconnected, and it's a potential hazard or danger to persons. Here's another example. It's been unoccupied for a period of at least 90 consecutive days. It demonstrates a lack of property maintenance. Water and electricity has been disconnected, and this also is a potential hazard or danger to persons. And the third example that I wanted to show you this evening, this particular property also has been unoccupied for a period of at least 90 consecutive days, demonstrates a lack of property maintenance and upkeep. Water or electricity has been disconnected and is a potential hazard or danger to persons. When we plot these structures on a map, about 90% of them fall into Old Town, and the remainder are at various locations within the city. We have developed a timeline to allow for notification of property owners whose properties meet this definition. And we intend for the letter to go out this week to advise those property owners of this situation. We hope to hear back from those property owners who will arrange to meet with our code enforcement staff and develop a plan of action to make the corrections necessary so they can have their properties removed from the list. And then after that, we'll work with them and hopefully they'll make the repairs necessary. And we'll continue to work with them until we get some results. But basically, the code also requires if the property remains on the list, it has to be registered as an abandoned building, and they have to pay a monthly fee for as long as it remains on the list. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions of Janice? Janice, you may have mentioned this and I may have missed it. What's the fee per month?
The fee per month will be about $31
$31 a month for every abandoned
for each building.
Okay. Ralph?
Janice, can a person opt to just pay the monthly fee indefinitely, or does greater demands made of the owner over time?
Well, we do intend to work up a plan for each property. Hopefully, we'll get the owners to agree to make those repairs. But in most cases, as you see, there are violations of our property maintenance code and perhaps even the dangerous building code. So the city could take action on many of those properties, but we'd like for this to be a partnership with the property owner and achieve the goal of having these properties either rehabilitated or at least preserved for the future occupancy. So there are some steps that a property owner can take to get those off of the list. They don't have to be occupied. They could be vacant, but they have to be ready for someone to occupy. They can't just be falling apart.
I guess I lost that thought.
It's not national TV. Rick Mihalovich.
What is the final recourse by the city? I mean, if no one pays the fees, nothing happens, is there a condemnation, or what is the end game?
It could be condemnation. If it meets the definition of a dangerous building, the city could pursue that option. But the ultimate remedy lies in the hands of the municipal court.
At some point in time, does it become a criminal issue, Drew?
Not very likely.
Okay.
It'll always stay in the civil realm.
But there'd be a ticket issued.
Yeah, I guess it depends
Okay,
on
sorry.
what your question is, but yeah, they could end up with code enforcement issues with property maintenance code. I don't think you'd ever get to the point where it'd be circuit court criminal kind of charge.
Okay. Mr. Bray.
I was going to ask if Janice, there's an opportunity for updates that we can hear about the success.
Yes, certainly.
And is that will that be in committee or during council meetings or?
We could do it however you prefer. We could start in committee and bring it to the council as a whole, or include reports in your packets.
So I'll probably see it or read it or hear it monthly. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Lubert.
Janice, is there any amount of ongoing communication between the city and these owners, or is that pretty much abandoned too?
Oh no, there will be communication between us and the property owners, because the goal is to have the properties improved and ready to be sold or occupied, so or rented, you know. So there'll be continual discussion with the property owners. It doesn't end with just a letter. We want to set up meetings with the property owners and develop a program for each property and a timeline so that we know when certain things are going to occur And we'll monitor those, the process and the progression of each.
Bill?
Yeah, my question wasn't maybe misunderstood, but I was asking it in past tense. Is there currently any amount of communication goes on between yourself and these owners?
With some of the owners, yes, we have regular correspondence and communication with some of those owners.
Anything else over here? Over here? Janice, thank you very much. It was a very good
Thank you.
proposal. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on. To nothing underneath number 12. Is that right, clerk?
Yes.
All right, the consent agenda. At this point in time, we'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as printed.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Seeing none, I feel you're ready to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next, we'll go on to bids over $50,000. There again, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Talking to Gail about a different issue. What was the question?
What's that?
What was the question?
Actually, it wasn't to you. I was asking for a motion from the council
sorry,
to
you were looking at me. I thought you were
approve
asking me a
number
question.
14. I thought you were going to make the motion there for a minute.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. You can definitely tell it's Tuesday. Okay. Any discussion? Sorry. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. All opposed, same sign. Moving on to number 15, bills introduced. We'll have first reading of Bill 2012-57.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending the 2011-2012 budget of the City of Jefferson, Missouri by appropriating additional funds from the general fund to non-departmental professional services.
Okay, Nathan.
Thank you, Mayor. This is, took me a minute to get oriented too. This is authorizing $100,000 that we will transfer to actually the City of Columbia. They will take this money and put it in a reserve fund, and the purpose of the reserve fund is for them to guarantee the profitability of an airline that they hope to bring in to increase air service to our area. We feel that since the airport at Columbia is only 15 minutes from our downtown, that this will greatly enhance our economic development opportunities, since one of the biggest things holding us back is lack of reliable air service, commercial air service, to Jefferson City.
Any questions there by the council?
Oh, I should add that the, in fairness, that the Airport Advisory Committee met today and did take this up, and they voted to oppose this.
Okay. Roger?
That was the same comment I was going to make.
Okay. All right. Bob?
What was their opposition?
I'd let Roger answer that since I wasn't actually present.
They discussed it for quite some time, and their concern, of course, is that the city's putting money into the, even though it's passenger service, into the Columbia airport, and also a concern that this may not be a one-time thing, that they may come back again in the future for additional revenue. They would prefer to see improvements made to the Jefferson City Airport to help air service here. So that was a lot of the discussion.
I just have a question, Nathan. I don't know if it's been brought up before, how many local businesses have already taken a look at this. I know there was a list at one time, did we see? Or
Yeah,
did I see?
there was a list, and there was a list that was published in the paper. I couldn't give you the number. It is quite numerous of lists of businesses that both said they would financially support this, and also who said that they would use an airline service if it was brought into the area.
Okay. Any other questions on 57? Mr. Bray?
Do we know how long it's to guarantee service? Do we know how long that service would be guaranteed?
I I'm not aware of any kind of fixed time for that. What would happen is that during the duration of that airline's operations, they would guarantee a certain level of profitability. If the profitability dropped below that, they would then use this money to reimburse the airline, essentially. And then when that money was gone, then that would be it.
Also, as a side note, I know that their mayor, Mayor McDavid's going to be here at our next meeting, too, to answer questions we may have as a group. Any other questions or comments on 57? Moving on, we'll have first reading of 2012-58.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri relinquishing a certain easement for sanitary sewer purposes across a tract of land recorded in Book 546, page 150.
Roger.
Thank you, Mayor. In 2004, the City Council actually vacated an easement for this sanitary sewer, but there was an error in the listing of the lots. This was discovered by the title insurance company, and they're asking us to make a correction here, so we're asking for approval of a corrected vacating of this easement.
Okay, any questions or comments for Roger on 2012-58? Seeing none, we'll have first reading of 59, please.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for Metropolitan Transportation Planning Services for the period of November 1, 2012 to October 31, 2013, reflecting funds as approved in the fiscal year 2013 Unified Planning Work Program.
Janice.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a transportation planning consolidated grant with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission, and it funds our Metropolitan Transportation Planning Organization for the next fiscal year, November 1 through October 31 of 2013. This is the 10th year that we've had this agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission. The UPWP for the next fiscal year was adopted by the Campo Board of Directors and appears as a division within Planning and Protective Services. Copy of the UPWP is on file with the city clerk, and it's also published on the Campo webpage. If the council will adopt this planning agreement and budget for 2013, you can replace the number that's in your proposed budget with this new number, which is about $100,000 less than last year, because we're not funding any consultant contracts in 2013. The consolidated planning agreement is for $148,172, which is the federal contribution. The local match required is $37,043 for a total work program of $185,215. And it's financed 80% federal, 20% local. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Janice? Just as a clarification, what was it going to do to next year's budget, the one that the council is currently working on?
This funding agreement is about $100,000, $99,000 less than the current year, because this year we have a consultant contract in there for our traffic modeling for our long-range transportation plan. Since that project will be completed next year, our budget will not include that, and that represents about $100,000.
Okay, any questions or comments by the council? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to 2012-60.
An ordinance amending the code of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, Chapter 3, Advertising and Signs, pertaining to freestanding signage for apartments and churches in residential zones.
Janice.
This amendment to advertising and signs, Chapter 3, modifies the signs permitted for certain non-residential uses that are located in residential zoning districts, such as schools, churches, and apartment complexes. The sign code is based largely on the zoning district, so commercial properties are allowed a wide array of building-mounted and freestanding signs, whereas non-residential land uses that are located in residential zoning districts have been restricted in terms of signage. The proposed amendment would create a class of freestanding signs that are permitted without the Board of Adjustment approval. It would allow apartments, churches, and schools specific signs without having to go to the Board of Adjustment by applying some area restrictions and height restrictions. The Public Works and Planning reviewed this proposed ordinance at their meeting on August 23rd, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Janice? Seeing none, we'll move on to 2012-61. First reading, please.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending the 2011-2012 budget of the City of Jefferson, Missouri by appropriating additional funds from the general fund to the fire department.
Chief Rennick.
Yes, this is a supplemental, one-time supplemental appropriation of $815,000 to purchase 76 air packs, 75 portable radios, 25 sets of structural gear, and 7 sets of natural cover gear. These are items that were in the sales tax that was defeated in August.
Any questions of Chief? Okay, moving on, 2012-62.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a contract with SSI Aeration Incorporated to replace the aeration diffusers at the Regional Water Reclamation Facility.
Roger.
Thank you, Mayor. Over at our sewer plant, we have 22,000 diffusers that are in operation over there. They're reaching the end of their life. They've been in use over there for about 8 years now. So we took bids to replace them, and this is the recommendation to award the contract to the low bidder of SSI in the amount of $105,737.
Any questions for Roger? Moving on to 2012-63.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement with Central Bank of Jefferson City, Missouri for banking services.
Terry.
Thank you. This request authorizes a contract for banking services with Central Bank of Jefferson City. A request for proposal was sent to 14 banking firms. It was posted on the website and published in the newspaper. A 4-member evaluation committee reviewed the 2 responses received. The Central Bank offer included a response to all the items in the request. The U.S. Bank offer was for credit card services only. The credit card portion of the RFP was evaluated separately. Central Bank offered a fixed 2% interest rate on the investment of daily cash balances and offered a higher credit card rebate percentage with a lower volume requirement. Federal funding clauses require notification of a recommendation for award. That notification was sent to the firms and no protest was received.
Any other questions of Terry on 63? Moving on, we'll have first reading of 2012-64.
An ordinance amending the code of the City of Jefferson, Missouri regarding the deposit fee paid by wastewater rate payers.
Roger.
Thank you, Mayor. We looked at the ordinance for the deposits on the sewer bills, and they varied depending on the type of facility you were living in, and it just didn't seem quite fair, the wide range of deposits we had. They ranged from $30 up to $120. The city's now taken over the billing for the Missouri American customers, and we'll be taking over the billing for Public Water District Number 2 at the first of the year. We think we're getting a better handle on the those that are delinquent in their payments. So we're actually recommending that all the deposits be made the same at $50. And the way the deposits work, you don't come in and sign up. You simply get this added to your first month's bill, and that's to help us collect any remaining fees should someone move at the end of their service.
All right, any questions of Roger? Seeing none, we'll have first reading of 2012-65.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending Section 19401, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Schedule J, Parking Prohibited, Subparagraph A of the Code of the City of Jefferson pertaining to a portion of Hyde Park Road.
Roger.
Thank you. This section of Hyde Park is where the city's maintenance facilities are, our sewer department's out there, the fire department's training center, and now the new animal shelter is out there. The animal shelter certainly has brought more traffic to the area, and looking at the traffic flow on this street, it was taken to the Traffic and Transportation Commission with a recommendation to limit the parking on this portion of Hyde Park that is the city's frontage. Parking is already restricted on Hyde Park to the west of this area, so it would extend it over to Heisinger Road. So we're recommending approval of this reduced parking.
All right, any other questions of Roger? Okay, moving on to 2012-66. First reading, please.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending Section 19401, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Schedule J, Parking Prohibited, Subparagraph A of the Code of the City of Jefferson pertaining to a portion of Williams Street.
Roger.
This is up near the intersection of St. Mary's and William Street, where we've had a number of traffic issues in the past. There are a lot of vehicles that are parked on the street in this area because one of the businesses there has a lot of folks that had to park on the street. They've now provided off-street parking, which has eased the problem a great deal. And at this point, the Traffic and Transportation Commission has reviewed this and is recommending removal of the parking on one side of William Street here because of how narrow it is and the problems with that intersection at St. Mary's.
Okay, any questions for Roger? All right, moving on to 2012-67.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement with the Missouri Department of Transportation for a ground lease at Jefferson City Memorial Airport.
Roger.
Thanks, Mayor. This is a renewal of a lease with MoDOT. They've had an airport lease in the past. They used to have 2 hangars. They've reduced it back to 1, but this is a new 5-year lease and has a 3% increase in the lease for each of the years going forward.
Any questions of Roger? Moving on to 2012-68.
An ordinance amending the code of the City of Jefferson, Missouri pertaining to stormwater floodplain management.
Roger.
Well, this is the long change in the code for our floodplain management, and what's in front of you is a model code that we received from FEMA. They have asked us to adopt the model code as part of the new regulations. What you have on the screen is one of the flood insurance rate maps that get updated every 10 years, and it's kind of difficult to see, but they have different areas. The blue line that's outlined is where the 100-year flood limit is, and then within that there's also a floodway that is kind of the middle of the blue area, and there are different restrictions that are applied based on whether you're within the floodway. It's very restrictive to try to build any structure inside of that area. If you're just within the 100-year flood plain, there are still restrictions, but they're not quite as severe. And the maps do change slightly from time to time. This time actually in the downtown area, the 100-year flood elevation actually went down slightly. It's down about a foot from where it was on the previous map. And the same occurred on the west end of Jefferson City in the Grays Creek area. But on the east end in the Boggs Creek area, it actually went up slightly. So these do change slightly from time to time, but this is a request to accept the model ordinance from FEMA for these flood insurance rate maps. Be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Any questions for Roger? Roger, thank you. Moving on to bills pending, we'll have third reading of 2012-53. Oops, before we get there, I forgot about Ralph Bray's 2012-69. And who's going to do, first, we'll have first reading first.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending the 2011-2012 budget of the City of Jefferson, Missouri by appropriating additional funds from the general fund for the Moreland Avenue Neighborhood Improvement Project.
Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a supplemental appropriation for improvements to the neighborhood on Moreland Avenue. This was discussed several months ago at Public Works and Planning and was reviewed. It involves replacement of sidewalks, some construction of new sidewalks where there are no sidewalks today, and then replacement of curbs. It also involves the replacement of one pipe down at the bottom of the hill. The total estimated cost at this point for this project is $200,000, and the neighborhood would contribute $10 per lineal foot of their frontage along this length of Moreland.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Mr. Bray.
Roger, would you explain the difference between the $150,000 figure and the $200,000 figure, please?
Yeah. Originally, when we were putting the budget together and I was working with the mayor on his project list, he said, we've got too many projects. I want to keep projects, but we need to shrink the cost of the projects. This one was in at $200,000, and I said, well, we can get it down to $150,000 if we take the pipe replacement out of the project, and we would just simply have to pay for the pipe with funds out of our regular general fund budget that gets appropriated to Public Works for repairs, for street repairs. So the $50,000 is for that pipe replacement that's down at the bottom of that hill. And we have to do something with the pipe if we're going to put a sidewalk across. There's not space there today. That's one area where there is no sidewalk, and to get the sidewalk across, we would have to extend that pipe.
I think Councilman Weber had a question. Bob?
It looks like this supplemental is coming out of 2011-12. I mean, can you get it done? Can you get the job done before then?
No, I think it's written that the appropriation shall survive until the project is complete and will not be forfeited to the fund balance at the end of the current budget year. We cannot get it done. We have just started some design work is all we've done at this point, and by November we won't even quite be ready to go to bid for the project at that time.
So it's a placeholder, Roger? Would that be the right term?
I'll let Drew answer that question. He drafted this, so.
Well, the appropriation will hold over into the next budget for whatever we haven't
So
used.
it's this year's budget, it happened as
Correct.
we get to it. Okay.
The funding comes from this year, so it just rolls into the next year's budget in that amount.
Is there any particular reason we just don't do it in the 13 budget?
I guess that would be a question for Councilman Bray.
I mean, it was in the mayor's budget, you know, and then we took it out, and that's next year's budget, but we're putting it in this year's, the way I read it. So, and if we're not going to do the work this year, I don't understand why we. I know it's a carryover and it's fund balance, but just was curious why it was taken out of this or be appropriated out of 11 and 12 budget.
I can offer a response to that. In the budget meetings, as we discussed the infrastructure projects, it was pointed out that this project stood out, was different from the others in that this was the only project that had gone through the Public Works and had been approved by Public Works. And that, and I heard more than one suggestion that we should just go ahead and do a supplemental appropriation for it. And then Thursday night, when we at the budget meeting, all infrastructure projects were removed from the 2013 budget that's under consideration, and then I kind of got the clue then that to go ahead and proceed with a supplemental appropriation. Therefore, the next day Drew got this worked up pretty good, and we had it ready to go. So I wanted to go ahead and, while it was still fresh in everyone's mind, go ahead and get it on the agenda this evening. A second reason would be, rather than hold off until 2013 and hold off or put it off, is because the neighborhood, which is represented here tonight by the neighborhood organizers, they have commitments from the neighbors to partner with the city for this project, and I would want to be sure to take advantage of the organization I would want to take advantage of the neighborhood that is organized now for the project, and show that the city is supporting this neighborhood improvement project.
I have a question for Drew or Finance. In an area like this where the project's going to be done next year, when does the neighborhood have to pay, or have they already paid a percentage up front? I just don't remember.
Roger can actually answer that one because you guys did that on Medine Way or whatever it was called.
El Marie.
Medine Way.
We have not collected the funds at this point, but the neighborhood has gotten commitments from the majority of the property owners to participate. But until the project was funded, we certainly haven't made any attempt at all to collect those funds yet.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on or comments on 2012-69? Okay, moving on to bills pending. We'll have third reading of 2012-53.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a contract with TWS Incorporated to construct the Algoa Treatment Facility Contract A, biosolids removal.
Roger.
This is out at our Algoa treatment plant. We've never removed the solids from that lagoon out there. It's been in service for a long time, and it's now time to get those solids removed before we have to start disinfection of that lagoon here in another little over a year from now. So we took bids to remove those solids, and TWS Incorporated was the low bidder at $224,000, and we're recommending approval of that low bid.
All right, any questions of Roger? All right, moving on, we'll have third reading of 2012-54. Oh, I'm sorry. We have to vote first. Roll call, please.
Lubert.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Pope. Prather.
Aye.
Schulte.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Bray.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Motion passes. Now we'll move on to 2012-54.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a contract amendment with Peckham and Wright Architects Incorporated for architectural services for the new fire station number 3.
Roger.
This is a change to the Peckham and Wright architecture design contract for our new fire station number 3 to be located out on Route 179. The reason for the change is we have added an additional storage bay, and the new backup 911 center has been added, as well as some hardening in the structure to protect the firefighters should there be a tornado or something of that nature. It also includes hardening of the 911 backup center. So this would be the first time the city would be able to have a truly secure backup 911 center. Currently that's stored out at the Capitol Mall, and you know, in Joplin those kind of facilities didn't fare too well in the tornadoes. So we're hopeful that this would give the city a really good facility to be able to handle any of those kind of emergencies in the future.
Any questions for Roger? Seeing none, I feel you're ready to vote. Roll call, please.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Pope.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schulte.
Aye.
Weber. Bray.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Lubert.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next we'll have third reading of 2012-56.
An ordinance authorizing a budget adjustment to the 2011-2012 budget of the City of Jefferson, Missouri by recognizing the receipt of funds from MoDOT and transferring the funds within the transit budget for vehicle repairs.
Roger.
Thank you. We did some pretty significant repairs to one of our buses that MoDOT does give grants for reimbursement of those funds. We've received the funds from MoDOT. They're now in our revenue account. We would like to transfer them and get approval to add it in the current budget as an expenditure so that we can use it for more vehicle repairs in our transit operations.
Super. Any questions for Roger? If you're ready to vote, roll call, please.
Pope.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schulte. Weber.
Aye.
Bray.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Lubert.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Motion passes. Now we'll move into the informal calendar. First we have on the list is 2012-50, dealing with the Village of Tribeca subdivision. Mr. Mahalovich, what's your preference this evening?
Remain on the informal.
Informal? All right. Anyone else have a problem with that? That will stay there till at least next week. Next we have 2012-51. Rick, what do you think about that one?
Same thing.
All right. Anyone else have a problem? Seeing none, that will also stay. Next we have 2012-52. Mr. Schulte.
Thank you, Mayor. Remain on the informal calendar, please.
Okay. Any problem with that? Seeing none, that will also stay on the informal calendar. No resolutions tonight. Next we have on the agenda presentations from the gallery on other topics. And I think our only guest tonight is Mr. Joe Wilson. Welcome, Joe. For the record, please give us your name and address. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes.
Name's Joe Wilson. Mailing address is 422 Oberman Place. Is this working?
Ask the guys back there. Is that good? It's good.
Is my clock started yet?
Actually, we have the opportunity to do just that, I think.
What?
We did before I went on vacation. I'm assuming it still works. Okay.
This is not a professional presentation, but I already have the notes in front of me, and they're not my own, so I'll go.
There's your clock, sir.
All right, thank you. I'm writing to tell a story that was so sad for me. This was posted on Facebook, okay? Due to the time factor, I can't read it all, and I can't read all the comments that were made on it, so I'll place it in your post office boxes or your mailboxes here. I'll also probably give it to the media. It's been suggested in here. I'll try to finish this story, and I have to use my own name in here because that's the way it came. I don't do this I'm not running for office, okay? It was so sad for me, but a very special man, Joe Wilson, was like a miracle for me and my dog Sunshine. It started, my dog was accused of biting a little boy. Well, at the time he was bit, my dog wasn't even here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The bottom line is this. This young lady, my name was given to her, and she called me. I then called Captain Sonova, following the chain of command. Gone. I then called the police chief, got a message. I then called the mayor and left a message. The message was basically this: I'd like for them to intervene in what is something literally a matter of life and death. You'll get the rest of the story in your post office boxes. But this lady, it was a crisis time because we were talking about a matter of life and death. If she didn't pay $540 at the shelter, her dog Sunshine was going to be killed. That upset me because supposedly we were following the code. It wasn't that long ago that the prosecuting attorney implemented, the city prosecutor implemented a program where people found guilty could work off their fines through community service. This was never presented to this lady. I had no choice because I was already involved to pay the money. As I told you before, she is on disability income. I then contacted Drew Hilpert, and a week later he responded in his own way. That will be in the box also. Drew took it to heart and to task. The last line was, so to sum this up, the PD did nothing inappropriate, and thus any claim for a refund must be denied. Joe, I'd like to see you get your money back, but we can't refund money when we followed the code. People, I'm here to tell you, if there's a code that says that we can use, quote, unquote, in their extortion, by threatening to kill a person's dog that she considers part of her family and loves very, very much, then the code's wrong. The code is wrong. And I don't think anybody sitting in front of me wants to be a part of that. Now, I'm here tonight by myself. And I read the letter Mr. Warwick wrote to the editor. I had to wait an hour to get here. And I told you before, it sends out a signal that I don't think is complimentary to you people that's elected by the people out here. We're still at the back of the bus. I don't know if there will be a refund. I live on Social Security. That's my income. But I had no choice. And I would hope that if you all were put in that situation, that you'd make the same move. A shelter is supposed to provide that opportunity for all animals that come in there for return home or to a new home, not to be used as a tool to get money. I will leave these in your mailboxes. It's pretty obvious. I'm pretty upset over this, and I don't like coming forward. I'm not a public speaker. But I think people should be judged by their actions or lack thereof. Any questions?
Thank you, Joe, for being here tonight. Drew, I would like for you to tell us, I know that I heard about this kind of early on.
Excuse me, just one
Excuse me,
moment,
sir,
please.
I have the
Excuse me.
floor.
I understand.
Joe,
but if it's
you
going
went
to
over
be
your
addressed,
time,
I'd
and I
like
have
to
the
be able
floor.
to respond to anything that's brought up here, though, rather than me sitting down. I've been down there.
Actually, you can sit down because Drew's going to make a presentation, and then we're going to move our meeting on. Drew, how long was this particular dog within the custody of the shelter?
Oh, actually, I can't recall off the top of my head. It's probably in that letter I gave to Joe. It was a couple of days for non-neutered dog, and there was a vaccination account. I guess what I tell you is that Joe's going to give you a copy of my letter, which has the explanation from the police department. And if you have any questions, I'm available.
Okay. Nathan, do you have anything to add?
And if Joe doesn't, I'll be glad to give you a copy.
That's
of it.
fine.
Could you just,
I
I mean,
want to
because
clarify,
not
I'm not
everyone
attacking
is going to be
Drew.
able to see
I
that
understand.
letter. Could you just summarize
Sure.
what the events are?
Yeah, the animal was picked up because it was alleged to have bitten a child. So they took the dog, they quarantined it for the time period that's required in the code because of the bite. The gal had an opportunity to pick the dog up. She ended up going to jail for non-payment, I think, of a fine. She was in jail for some purpose, and so that dragged it out a bit longer. And the fine got up. There's a certain number, I think it's $20 a day for an unneutered dog that we hold the animal, plus the lack of rabies. We don't release the dog without the rabies. So at that point, we'd held the dog for, I think, 10 days. Actually, I think it was 10 days now that we talk, and that's when Joe got involved, and he paid the money on behalf of the gal. And that's essentially why we had the dog was picked up. Now, Joe brought forward a concern that he thought that the PD had information that the child did not actually bite the child. At least PD's points out that they did not have that information, so that they held it the appropriate amount of time, and Joe kindly paid that for his for this gal. But the money was charged pursuant to the days in the code, and that's why we held the dog.
I'd be curious to see what other cities do in this particular case, Drew. If you wouldn't
I can
mind
look at
bringing
sure.
that towards the council, I think we'd like to see it. Joe, I know you're a very passionate man. We've known each other for a long time. Appreciate you coming. Is there any other questions for Joe tonight? Councilman Pope.
Drew, was it $500 and some dollars?
I think that's right.
And that was associated with the upkeep of the dog?
Yeah, none of it was a fine by the court. It was either holding fees or vaccination fees.
For the dog?
For the dog.
Nothing else?
Correct.
And how long was the dog there?
I think 10 days.
Okay.
I can't recall the exact day off the top of my head, but I'm guessing we were at 10.
And the rule is if the dog doesn't go for adoption,
then ultimately, if the dog becomes the city's property after 10 days, if you don't pick up your dog, at that point, they could adopt it out if it's suitable for adoption, and if it's not suitable for adoption, it would be destroyed. And I'm taking from what Joe said and what he told me before that the shelter said they wouldn't adopt the dog out. Now, I don't recall now if I independently confirmed that or not.
But the dog was picked up because of an alleged bite.
Correct.
And then was it later confirmed that there was or was not a bite?
It was, they did not end up charging for the bite, if I recall correctly, although frankly, maybe I shouldn't say that. I'd have to check that out. I don't remember now.
We don't know whether there was a bite.
I think that's correct.
Okay.
The victim never recanted, I guess. Do you know anything about that?
Chief Schrader.
I personally called and spoke to one of the court clerks, and she told me there were multiple violations, to include traffic violations that were not paid by the owner of the dog, and that is why the expense was larger than one might expect. There were a lot of things pending before municipal court, and she had not, I guess, taken care of her responsibilities, so we were simply, by their own regulations, we can't release the animal or address that particular issue till she satisfied other mandates of the court. And we held the dog for many weeks, not just the 10 days.
Okay.
I was thinking
that part's not right, though, Chief. We didn't hold the $500 that the gal had to pay were not municipal court fines. Those were all associated with holding the dog.
I can only repeat what the clerk told me, and that's what she told
Right.
me.
She was in jail for the non-payment of other fines, which kept in part kept her from coming out to the shelter in theory and picking up the dog.
Well, I think there were so many violations at different levels that might be the reason for the confusion. And until we trace this back through again, maybe to confirm things, we really don't know. But the clerk said that that several fines had been levied already, had not been satisfied, and that was what was owed the court. And that's what I was told.
So my follow-up is the money that was required to get the dog free, did it include previous fines for other infractions or not?
No, it did not. It was only for the dog, the time we held the dog.
Could we have a report
Yeah, I can do
listing all
that.
of those
Sure.
expenses? Okay, great.
All righty. Any other questions? All right. Moving on to number 20, council and staff discussion of presentation topics. Seeing none, moving on to new business. A new business to bring before the council this evening. Seeing none. Whoops. Excuse me.
We had another person that wanted to speak under the previous item, but
We've moved on. Who was the other person? Mr. Reisick, you have 3 minutes. What's that? Can't hear you, sir. Does anyone have a problem if Mr. Reisick gets his turn at the mic right quick? Okay. Frank, good to see you again. Frank, you serve on our airport advisory board.
Correct.
Okay.
I chair the committee. Frank Reisick, 406 Chestnut, and my statements here are representing the committee, not myself. I'm talking about bill number 2012-57, supplemental appropriation to non-departmental professional services for Columbia Airport. I'm going to relate what happened at this morning's meeting. The committee voted overwhelmingly against the city of Jefferson spending this money. And it was so overwhelming that even after we voted to recommend against it, I had a hard time stopping discussion. They still wanted to discuss against it. Two of the main items that the committee brought forward were that the Jefferson City Memorial Airport is in great need for many things, and we've had a hard time getting things. It's getting better now than it was, but the Jefferson City Memorial Airport has many needs, and that was suggested to be a priority over sending the money to Columbia. And the other item brought forward by Mr. Lucanati, who is in back, was that he has seen other situations where airlines have required a certain promise of a certain number of seats, from a city government, and after that 1 year's promise of this money, the airline disappeared. It didn't work out. He suggested it was a non-viable proposal. What I would like to suggest, since I heard from Mr. Lutkanati this evening that Mr. Nicholas expressed a lot of support for this, or shared a lot of support that he received for this, that what might help the city council in making a decision is if we could possibly get city staff to get the minutes of the airport advisory committee meeting from this morning transcribed early, that fraction of the meeting discussing the proposal before us, and you could get the totality of the discussion, and it would help you in making your decision before next time, if that could possibly happen.
I don't think that'd be a problem at all. Who's our liaison to that committee? Is it, sorry, Sean? And who's the staff person? Roger, that'd be a problem? I know, especially since the council's in budget
We'll take care of
considerations
that.
now and whatnot. All right, great. And also, just so you know, I know that there's going to be other business leaders and stuff here in the next couple weeks, along with Mayor McBride from Columbia. Bob's been working on this a lot,
Here
so
at
just
the
so you know.
city council meeting, you mean?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you for allowing me to come late.
No problem.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No, just teasing. You're fine. Thank you, Frank. Was there any questions for Frank? I'm sorry. Okay, moving on to new business. Seeing any? Unfinished? Scheduled reports. At this point in time, pursuant to Missouri Statute 610.021, we will ask the council to go into closed session to talk about personnel, which is section 610.021, subchapter 3. At this point in time, we'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Feel you're ready to vote? Roll call, please.
Bray. Henry.
Aye.
Lubert. Mahalovich.
Aye.
Pope. No. Prather.
Aye.
Schulte.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Motion passes. We are officially adjourned. Have a great night and drive home safely.